and welcome back to Unpopular People.
We believe that listening and learning from each other is key for personal development and success.
Today in our interview, Emmanuella from Canada.
She's originally from Canada, but she studies medicine at Griffith University in Queensland, Australia.
You will find out more about her in this interview and all the show notes about this episode on our website www.unpopularpeople.com.
On our website you can also find a shop where you can buy clothes to represent our Unpopular People community.
And don't forget to sign up for our newsletter, which you will find on
www.unpopularpeople.com.
And now enjoy this amazing interview with Emmanuella.
Hello, Emmanuella. How are you? We hope you had a good day. Thank you very much for your time today. It's a pleasure to have you here. And we always start with the fact our first question in our podcast is always the same, just to give our listeners a brief idea about who you are. So, where were you born and how did you grow up?
Thank you for having me on your show today. So I was born in Winnipeg, Manitoba, a city in the prairies in Canada. I lived there for less than a year before my parents and I moved to Australia. So there we lived in Melbourne for about 2 years. And my sister was born in Melbourne. And then as soon as my sister was born, we moved back to Winnipeg because my dad got another job teaching at the university there. And then we moved to Vancouver in British Columbia, which is also in Canada, but in the west. Much more beautiful than Winnipeg, but still love Winnipeg, of course. And then we moved back to Winnipeg, where we were there for... I don't remember exactly when we moved. I must have been around 4 or 5 years old. And then I completed kindergarten to grade 4 there. And then we moved to Calgary, Alberta, in the mountains. And I completed the rest of my schooling there, graduated from high school. And then from there, I've sort of been hopping around doing university in different places because I've just been so used to not being in one place at the same time or at once. So I just have got used to moving around a lot.
And why did you decide to move back to Australia? Did you move back on your own for your studies or did you move with your family as well?
So a little bit of background, I guess. My undergraduate degree is in medical biochemistry and I completed that in British Columbia, a city called Kelowna. And after completing that, I thought that I wanted to pursue medicine. And I'm sure many people know medicine is sort of difficult to get into in most places, but especially in Canada because there aren't a lot of medical schools there. And then also the number of medical places there are quite low. So I applied and I didn't get in. So I ended up doing my Master's of Science in Neuroscience. And after completing that, or during completing that, I was living away from home again. So I was in Edmonton in Alberta. And I guess at that point I was used to living away from my family. So I had it in my head that I would love to move elsewhere for medical school. And Australia is very similar to Canada in a lot of ways. And I've also previously lived here before. So I thought, you know what, let me apply. And I actually applied one cycle and I didn't get accepted. I got an interview here, but didn't get an offer. And then I applied the subsequent year, which was last year during COVID. And I got an interview again, and I don't know. I don't feel like that interview went super great. So I was like, oh no, here I go again. What am I going to do? And then I think it was in December that I got my interview offer, and I had less than 3 weeks to pack up all my stuff and move out here to Australia. And so to answer your question, I moved out here alone. And I think I underestimated how far it is and how far away I am from my family. But yeah, it's been interesting. It's been very different from all the other times that I've moved away for school, because I'd always be able to go home for the weekend or like middle of the week, just like hop on the highway and drive down or hop on a flight. But now, not so easy. It's a long journey, and also because of COVID, that also adds an additional barrier. But yeah, so I'm here like alone, but it's been really good so far. So
yeah, I will have many questions about neuroscience and along the way, but I have to hold back for now. I will ask first. So you said you have a sister that was born in Australia, in Melbourne. Do you have any other siblings? And also let us know a little bit more about your parents. Why did they move from place to place all the time?
Yes, so I have my sister who is a year and a half, almost 2 years younger than me. And then I have another, not another brother. Sorry. And then I have a brother also. He's younger, and he's 4 years younger than me. He was actually born in Vancouver. Fun fact, my brother and I share the same birthday. Yeah, so my 4th birthday, I spent in a hospital parking garage waiting for him to be popped out. So I don't know if it was a present or not. It's just because ever since turning 4, I've had to share my birthday. So I didn't love that growing up, but sorry, what was your other question?
Yeah, first of all, I hope you get along now and you don't have to share your presents anymore. But the other question was, why did your parents move around so much? Yeah.
So a little bit of background about my parents, I guess. They were both born and raised in Ghana, which is in West Africa. And my dad, he's the smartest person I know. So he had an opportunity to move to Winnipeg, I think right after him and my mom got married, to complete his PhD. So he initially moved by himself to complete that schooling. And then my mom eventually was able to get her, I guess, visa to move to Canada as well. And when he completed his PhD, or just before he completed his PhD, he got a job offer in Australia as a professor. So he took that opportunity, and then my mom was like, I guess, along to come for the ride. And her her experience, she was a teacher. She trained as a teacher. So I think her initial idea was that she was going to proceed doing that wherever they were. And I guess it's quite difficult depending on the qualifications and what your training is in other countries when you move to Western countries such as Canada or Australia or the US, really. So that didn't directly translate. So she decided instead of teaching, she was going to do early child development and childcare, essentially. And so that's what she did in Australia. She did not love it. And so from there, and then also I think she had a really hard time adjusting in Australia, because when they were in Winnipeg, she has an uncle that lives there. So there was still some family, and there's quite a large community to support them. And then being in Australia, not necessarily alone, but with like a significantly smaller support network, and then having me, a small child, and then she was pregnant, and then to have my sister as well, it was just a lot because my dad was always working as like a new professor. So I think it was truly her like unhappiness, her unhappiness that led to my dad looking at other job opportunities that were back home or in Winnipeg. So that's what led to moving from Australia back to Winnipeg. And then I'm not quite sure why we moved from Winnipeg to Vancouver. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure why we moved back from Vancouver to Winnipeg. I've never asked my parents that. It's something that I should maybe ask. But then, so we were in Winnipeg for a long time after the move from Vancouver. So it was my sister, my brother, and I. And then, of course, like my mom's uncle, who like I call grandpa and like grandma. So like we had like, a lot of family out there. And then my mom started to go to school actually when we were in Winnipeg. I think maybe that's part of what took us or made us spend so much time there. She went back to school for nursing, so she became a registered nurse, which was quite interesting to do with 3 young children. And this was probably back in like 2004, 2000, actually no, like let's say years 2000 to 2004, where like to use the internet, you'd have to unplug the phone and then do like the dial up and like, so we didn't have iPads to keep us distracted. So we were just like always bothering her. So she was studying in the late night. Then I remember there were nights where like my sister and I would be like in bed just giggling and laughing. My mom would be like, I'm trying to study. And then we just like, we were total menaces. But it's okay. One good thing was my mom's mom, so my grandma from Ghana, was able to come. And so she helped her out with that because my dad moved to Calgary. So I think it was in the last year or so of my mom's degree, my dad got a job offer in Calgary for an oil and gas firm. And that was like during a big boom in Alberta. So I guess a very good opportunity. And the plan was for when she was to finish school, we would all move over there. So that was what I guess instigated the move from Winnipeg to Calgary. And I remember like so like strongly when we moved to Winnipeg, or when we moved to Calgary, sorry, my parents were having this conversation. My dad's like, oh yeah, like I got a job offer in Seattle. And like I overheard that and I was like, I don't care what you do, I'm not moving again. We've been here for a year. We're not moving to Seattle. Like, I don't care if you get $1 million an hour, like we're done. And so I don't know if that was what did it, but we stayed in Calgary for the rest of the time. But yeah, so really it was just like job opportunities and I guess just like personal and professional development and growth of my parents that caused us to move around so much.
That sounds really tough for your mom especially, but also for you and your siblings. So what did you learn from back then from your mom? So what kind of advice also can you give to other people? What you learned for yourself, how to handle it, to move so often from places to places and to get along and to all the circumstances when everything is new?
I was actually talking to my mom yesterday and I was complaining about, I think I might have been complaining about people getting stressed over group work, over the group project we're working on. And she was like, oh, like I know you're like very good at handling stress, you know, like, and you're like very good at like meeting new people and understanding their different backgrounds and stuff like that. She's like, that's why we moved around so much. And I was like, I don't think that's why we moved to, like, it wasn't for character development, but it worked out that way. So I think one of the main things that I've learned and like carry with me from moving so much is that everyone has like a different story, different experiences. And also like people who do have the same experiences, they experience them differently, if that makes sense. So like comparing, let's say, even my sister and I, like, we have very different personalities. But you would think that we've ideally gone through the exact same things. She's a lot more closed off and, like, it takes a longer time for her to, like, open up to people. Whereas for me, I think I'm able to open up easier. I don't know. I don't know exactly how to explain it, but yeah, so I think that's one big thing is just to like be open and like everyone experiences things differently and reacts to things differently. And sometimes it can be annoying or frustrating, but it's important to like try to understand things from the other side, even if you don't know what they're going through or what they've gone through. I think just benefit of the doubt is there's a reason for everyone's actions and reactions. And then from my mom, I think I learned how to persevere and really fight for what you want. So like her doing nursing with 3 young kids, like that's a 4-year degree. Holy moly. I don't know if I personally could or would do that. But like, I guess moving out here, I'm just like, oh, like sometimes like some days kind of suck, but I'm just like, you know what? I did want to be here. This was like looking on the bright side, I've wanted this. I've been working so hard towards this. I was like on like down days, I have to remind myself, there were days I was so excited to move to Australia to study medicine, to meet new people, have new experiences. It's not always going to be peachy. There's going to be some more blue days, and that's okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, you studied neuroscience and you're studying medicine now, so you turned out well. What about your siblings? What do they do?
So my sister, it's funny because I was saying we're so different. My sister, she did her undergraduate degree in chemistry, and she is currently in the process of doing her master's of science in chemistry also. And she is hoping to do medicine as well. We were just speaking the other day, and she's like, oh yeah, I think I might want to come to Australia too. And I was like, classic. Of course you want to do it because I'm doing it. Surprise. So yeah, that's her path right now. And my brother, he just graduated from his bachelor of something in engineering. So he's doing electrical engineering. So he's right now just like looking for a job. I think he chose an excellent field because in this time of technology, there's lots of opportunity for software design and hardware design and AI. So I'm kind of jealous. I wish I do love medicine. And the reasons that I pursued medicine obviously trump not the ease, but the excitement of these new technologies. But I think if I were to not do medicine, I think I would have liked to go into something to do with like artificial intelligence and all that stuff. I just think it seems so cool. And then there's also links to neuroscience with AI. So it's just such a fascinating topic, but yeah.
Yeah, so this is also my next question. What do you find so fascinating in medicine? I mean, it is in general, of course, but why is it your dream, or was it always your dream to study this field?
Unlike a lot of people who say like, oh, since I was a child, like I knew, I did not know. Yeah, that was not me at all. I went through lots of different phases. There's a time, like one of the more recent ones, I think I was in grade 7, we had a project we had to do to like make a vision board of what we wanted to be when we grew up. And there were people who wanted to be doctors and teachers and everything. And I wanted to be a fashion journalist. And I made it very clear, not a fashion designer, but a fashion journalist. And I forget why, but I think a fashion journalist had more freedom in their scope of practice. I don't know if practice is the right term, but their scope of work, and a lot of more like creative freedom and stuff. And I don't know what I was watching at the time that I was like, oh, I'm going to be a fashion journalist. Because also looking back at those years, I was not fashionable at all. So yeah, I wanted to be a fashion journalist once. And then that switched to, I wanted to be a lawyer. And I wanted to be a lawyer again because of fashion. I just loved watching people in their skirt suits and like just like their nice suits, and I was like, oh, I'd be an excellent lawyer because I would know what to wear. But I have a terrible memory, so I don't think I would be a good lawyer in that regard. So eventually like that changed, and I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do during high school. I've always liked sciences. I've always been good at math. So I was just like, worst comes to worst, like I'll go to school, like get my degree in science. I don't know what that's going to get me, but that's a later problem. And then it was in grade 11 where I was doing, we were doing biology, and admittedly, I'm a very bad student. I'm not going to lie. My studying habits are very bad. I'm a procrastinator. It's very bad. That's a confession. But we did neurobiology, and I was just absolutely fascinated, and I just like had a knack for it. And I was like, what can I do with neuroscience and neurobiology? Like, this is just so cool to me. And then so like upon learning more, I was like, oh, you know what, like I want to do something with neurology. And then eventually it just clicked that medicine was the path that I wanted to take, because I love the brain. And then also I love interacting with people and like.
We're taking a quick break and be right back into the show. We love interacting with people too.
If you like to interact with us and our Unpopular People community, visit our website www.unpopularpeople.com
and sign up for our newsletter to join. Now back to the show.
Helping people, as cliche as that sounds. And so medicine just became like the clear path for me. I did consider psychology, but then because of the neuro-specific aspect, that wasn't fully encompassing of that. So I was looking towards psychiatry, and then when I started doing my master's, I was like, oh, neurology, yeah. Whoa, so many neuro words. Neurology. And then there was a time where I was like, oh, I'm going to be a neurosurgeon. I don't know about that anymore. It's a lot of work, a lot of time. But yeah, exactly. So I think that's like what brought me to medicine. It wasn't a clear-cut path. It wasn't a clear-cut path, but it was the right path for me to get to where I am now, if that makes, yeah.
Yeah, wow, that's very impressive. I mean, there's a procrastinator in everyone, so you're not unique with this. I think everyone has their times in life where you start finding things for yourself and what's the right choice. So, I mean, like going through so many different aspects of university, also in different countries. I mean, it's still the Commonwealth, but do you experience a big difference between the universities in Canada and universities in Australia?
A little bit, but they're all like little like trivial differences, I think. The main one is, I think the main differences are like the terms that we use and also the periods of study. So for example, like in Canada we say like, oh, like semester, but here it's trimester. And like just like little trivial things like that. But one big difference that I'm like getting used to, which isn't super specific to school, but just like being and living in the Southern Hemisphere, is like right now we are in, what month is it? May? We're in May, and it's considered spring, and we're just about to enter, or it's considered fall, and we're just about to enter winter, but I'm used to the opposite. So I'm just like, people are like, oh, like it's winter semester, and it does not feel like winter. And also I'm used to winter being like December. But in terms of like the teaching, I think I haven't been able to get a very good grasp of what teaching looks like in Australia, just because I came during COVID times. So all my lectures are online. There's just a few things that we have in person, whereas when I was back home, for both my undergrad and my graduate studies, everything was in person. So there was more opportunity to interact with your professors if you needed to, just like pop into the office hours and stuff, which it's still available here. But if you're hardly on campus, there's not too much of a motivation to go talk to your professors if that's the case, like if that's necessary. You can just shoot them an email and they'll respond when they have the time. And then also another big thing is getting to know my cohort. So because of COVID, they split us up into 3. And so there's still people that I'm meeting every day that I like have never seen before that are in their first year of medicine also. So a lot of the differences that I've noticed aren't necessarily because we're in Australia, but because of the pandemic. But yeah.
And what do you think or realize are there advantages or disadvantages that everything is online or changed to more online now?
Personally, I like that lectures are online. And the main reason I like that is because they're also recorded. So you can watch a lecture and then you can go back to watch it. Or you could not watch a lecture when at 5 a.m., at 9 a.m., but you could watch it later at like 1 p.m. My times are off. Yikes. Yeah. But yeah, you can like really adjust your schedule to suit you. I know a lot of people that are still working now, whereas previously it would be super difficult to balance the schedule with a work schedule. So I think it provides a greater opportunity for just having more flexibility with what you want to do with your time. And also it can be a lot more effective. And so I personally like having that online. And then we do have some in-person aspects, which are good. So like communication skills, where we get to practice if we were to be on the wards or in a GP clinic. And then just a couple other things. We have problem-based learning, which is in small groups. So I think there's definitely benefits to it, but then I know that a lot of other people would prefer having in-person lectures. So I think it just depends on like what you value and how you learn best, and if you need like a super strict regime or if you can just like ebb and flow your way through it, and because it is a lot of self-directed learning this way also. But
yeah, but I also think it's good to have the choice between both, so you can pick the day when you want to go, or if you want to stay at home. Sometimes it's also more convenient. So neuroscience. I was waiting for this. So I mean, for me, it's so fascinating that we know so much about the universe and the moon and the stars and all around us, but we carry this thing in our heads that we can't really tell, like, why do we know those things and how does it work that we can, like interact, and like the whole mystery about our brain is just so incredible. So I think it's a very fascinating topic. And so what direction do you want to go with neuroscience, if you want to go further down that path, like more in a cognitive way, or like which way do you want to go?
I think you like hit the hammer on the head. I don't know if that's the right the nail on the head. That's the right euphemism. You knew what I meant. Because it is a complete mystery. We don't know much about the brain at all, which is part of why it is so fascinating. So that being said, there's like so many different avenues when it comes to neuroscience of where you can explore. Like previously when we were talking about like AI and how the brain can be mapped, or I think someone is trying to map the brain, Elon Musk, and what that means for cognition or for disease or for development or for so many different things. Personally, I am very interested in cognition and neuroplasticity. So how our brains are able to react and adjust to trauma, and how different compensatory mechanisms to overcome trauma or like misconnections. And when I say trauma, like not necessarily just physical trauma, whether that's surgery or concussion, but like even emotional trauma. And then how like your brain can sort of like consolidate memories and just like lock things away. Like how does that work, and why like how does our brain know to protect us, and what triggers that? There's just so many questions. But in my master's, I was studying Parkinson's disease, so I'm also very fascinated with neurodegeneration, and how or why it occurs. There's just so many questions. But in my studies, I was looking at a particular gene in all our mitochondrial cells, and it's been found that there's certain mutations within this gene that result in faulty protein, and then this faulty protein has been found to cause an accumulation of this protein in the brain, and it's not super known. And so I was just studying, how this protein could lead to the pathogenesis of Parkinson's disease, or is it a result of Parkinson's disease? Like there's just so many questions that we don't have the answer to. There's also questions we don't even know to ask. Yeah, so I really am interested in neurodegeneration also. Not necessarily just Parkinson's disease, but like Alzheimer's disease as well, multiple sclerosis, just anything and everything. Because it's absolutely insane to me how something as small as like proteins that we can't really see in the brain can cause us to lose to lose anything, like to lose our ability to move, or our ability to remember, our ability to communicate with people. It's just absolutely insane to me. So there's just a lot we don't know, and there's a lot to learn.
Yeah, and also, I mean, like all the things we do subconsciously, everything like now how you pass the microphone to me without even thinking about like your hand moving over to this direction, how Lisa just picked up the glass and had a sip of water, without even, like the water goes into your mouth and it just like kind of disappears, it's like goes into like a black hole sitting like, maybe it's an illusion sitting on top of your throat, you don't really know. So there's like so many questions around this. It's really great that you're going into this field. Like me personally, I want to go the same way down. And it's also very interesting that we have Elisa and I, we have friends from Calgary, and we have friends from Brandon, which is very close to Winnipeg as well. That's Roger and Serena. You can listen to them in season 2 of our podcast. And so thank you very much for giving us this insight in your studies and everything. So what is your long-term goal with all of this? I mean, you explained that you want to find out a lot of things. Do you want to go into research, or do you want to go into, you said you thought about doing neurosurgery, but I think you gave this up. But what is your long-term goal?
Oh, my long-term goals. I'm not sure. I'm sort of just going along with the flow. One thing, even though I do love neuro and I am absolutely fascinated by it, I do also want to keep an open mind, because the other body systems are also fascinating in different ways. A weird body system, so the gastrointestinal tract, which before my undergrad I'd be like, oh, like why does that matter? Who cares about the stomach and all that stuff? The gut, ugh. But then there's one course, my microbiology course in my undergrad. Our professor, she did research on the flora, so the bacteria in our gut, and how it has so many links to, it has links to our brain, it has links to like our metabolism, it has links to everything. So I think there's still a lot of different body systems that have a lot of promise in research. And also, as time goes on and as we learn more, we're going to start to know how significant some of these things that we never really thought about really are. So I want to keep an open mind and just see if I am swayed towards any other direction, even though I do have my eye on neuro. And even me mentioning the GI tract, like I brought neuro into it, so I'm definitely biased towards it. But yeah, so long term, in terms of what route I want to take, I'm not quite sure. I'm just gonna leave it open, see what happens. And in terms of research, I do believe I do think I want to do research. I think I want to be a clinician, just because my experience doing my master's was so good. My supervisor was an amazing support, especially because I had no research experience before. So that was really eye-opening to the world of research and what that means and where that can take us. It's just a matter of, I guess, opportunity maybe. And then if there's a project that is compelling enough for me to want to take it. Yeah. I don't know, my long term, I'm just looking into the abyss, but I think long term, I don't really even know what I'm going to do tomorrow. So long term, I'm not quite sure, but I'm open to most things, I think is the short answer to that.
And do you like to stay in Australia, or do you want to go back to Canada one day?
I'm not sure yet. That's another thing. My family believes that I'm going to stay here As soon as I got accepted, they're like, oh, she's moving to Australia. We're never going to see her again. But I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think it depends on like a number of factors. What graduation like looks like, if I'm deciding to intern here, if I want to go intern somewhere else to specialize in something groundbreaking, who knows? And then also depending on like personal life stuff, if I meet somebody or, you know, just stuff like that. So it totally depends. Totally up in the air. Kind of like my long-term goal is just anything that comes my way. I think I'll just take it in stride.
And I have 2 questions, but you can answer them together. So how old are you? And what advice can you give others in your age?
That's a big question. So I'm 26 years old. I'm turning 27 in September.
I thought you were very young. That's why I asked the question. What advice can you give others in your age?
How old did you think I was?
I mean, from all the studies you've done, you know, like you look at the person and you think like, oh, she looks quite young. But from all the studies you've done, I'm like, I wasn't really sure anymore. So that's why I got confused. And that's why I think like, okay, she must be very like young and did all the studies. So what advice can you give others if they like struggling with university or if they're struggling with finding something? And also like you, like what gives you the confidence to move on, even if you don't have long-term plans? Because a lot of people, especially nowadays with the whole world change within a year completely, and you can't make long-term plans anymore. There was like a trick question. So they're struggling with this. So what advice can you give others to stay relaxed as you are?
I think I will say I am super lucky to have such a good support system. My family is incredible. My friends are incredible. And that definitely is a major contributor to being able to roll with the punches, I guess. Advice that I would give other 26 years old, other 26-year-olds is to, I feel like it's naive to say this. I'm going to say this and then add a caveat to it. But really find the people that you can rely on, and don't take them for granted, but they're there to support you. So if you need to lean on them, don't be afraid to. But at the same time, you have to remember to be able to be that person for them as well, because it's not easy for everybody. And I know that, so the caveat is I know not everyone has people that are such big supporters or such very close to them in their lives. And I think that advice sort of goes the same, but for yourself. I think you first and foremost are the one person that can support you. You know you best. If you're able to, this is going to sound so hippy dippy, but if you can like look within yourself and like find ways to like keep your peace, everything happens for a reason. I'm such a big believer in that. And sometimes are going to be tough, and then other times will eventually be better. You just have to try and keep pushing forward and take it day by day instead of looking forward to what you want to accomplish and staying fixated on that. Just take it day by day, one step at a time. And some of those steps are going to be sideways or backwards, and that's okay. But it's just important to like introspectively know who you are, what you want to achieve, and you can achieve it. You just have to do it. And it's not going to happen overnight. Just relax, and whatever will be. And like, we're in a pandemic. Like, things are crazy. So try to keep your bubble as little crazy as possible.
And how do you handle setbacks, or when you have days when, I think everyone has them, when you're really down and you think like, oh, how can I handle all this? How do you bring yourself back in this mood you just described, that you believe in yourself and in that it's right what you're doing?
So personally, I have personal days all the time. So if I'm down and I need to spend the day in bed crying, I will do that. And I think part of that, like part of what I mentioned before, is being able to allow yourself to be sad or to grieve or to be upset, because that is a valid feeling. It's such a valid feeling. And so you need to be able to let yourself live in that. And then no one wants to feel sad all the time. So being able to like find the light at the end of the tunnel, and it can be hard, and it is hard, because also once you like, again, speaking personally, but like once I'm in like the pits, it's just, I'm just like, I can't see up. I'm just like, oh, like just, it just keeps getting deeper and deeper, and you like cry and cry. Oh, but if you need to like nap or like whatever it is that like, if you need a day, if you need 2 days, take it. I think that's my advice. It is important to respect yourself, to allow yourself to feel bad so that eventually you can feel good again. I don't know if that answered that question.
Yeah, that's really good, I think. It's really motivational speak, so thank you for this. That's a good advice, I think. Yeah.
I have a question. Another question. Of course, I have a question. I'm doing a podcast here, so you're asking questions. Yeah, but I was wondering, do you think we have, and now we go really deep, do you think we have free will? And do you think we should have a conversation about free will in general?
Follow-up question on your question. Free will as individuals or like as a society? What do you mean by free will?
As an individual.
I do think we have free will. I think that's a very complicated question.
That's why I asked the second question. Do you think we should have this conversation, or do you think it's not necessary nowadays?
I think it depends on who you encounter, to be honest. Because it's such a multifaceted question, it can bring in spirituality, it can bring in religion, it can bring in science, cosmic, everything, anything. And so if you were to ask this question to someone who just likes to play the devil's advocate and just is like, I don't know. It depends on who you ask, but I think it is a great question to ask the right people, because it opens you up to new perspectives and new ideas and new concepts. And I think it's interesting to see how people's lives and experiences shape what they believe in terms of free will, and if we have it, or like what extent of free will we do have. But I think that's a very complicated but interesting question. So I think it is a good conversation to have if you have the time, because it's also a massive conversation. It can, yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think it is a great conversation to have. Just depends on who with, and then also if you want to have that conversation, like have it with like an open mind, be able to say what you think, how you feel, your experiences, and also be open to listening to the other side or whoever else is talking about it.
Just a little bit of follow-up question why I asked this, because we had 3 episodes ago, sorry, we had someone on the show, and I asked the same question. It was a very religious person, and I was just wondering your point of view on this, and also if you have this space for spirituality in your life.
Yeah, so I'm actually Catholic, but I feel like I'm not the traditional or stereotypical, and I'm using air quotes, Catholic, in that my beliefs and behaviors are not often aligned directly with the church, if that makes sense. So I guess I'm religious, but I usually say I'm more spiritual than religious, because I do believe in God, but then there's things that are taught and spoken about in the church that I don't agree with. So I don't know. And I also don't know if I'm just like disconcerting it to myself to like make myself feel better. But like I was like, my parents raised me in like a very like spiritual household. Like we pray every time I talk to my mom. She's like, don't forget your prayers. I'm like, I won't. But yeah, so that definitely influences my interactions with others, with people, and also like it does contribute to my ideas. So that's why I didn't quite answer your free will question, because you know what? I'm actually not sure. I do think we have free will, but there's like so many different, like, I don't know. There's just so many different things, and also how that relates to religion, and like also Catholicism versus Christianity, and what that means, what free will truly looks like, and it's a whole conversation. But yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. So, and also like to bring more light into what I was just why I asked all of this is because like I see many people struggling with those things. If like free will, yes, no. Again, do we need to have this conversation? Yes, no. It's a like good question, because sometimes it's unnecessary. You know, we have this life, we live in this reality. So do we really need to speak about this? Like, even if it feels like free will, if it's free will or not, doesn't matter in the end. So, but also with belief, because I think it plays a big role in many people's lives, and I think it's the hardest one to find. You know, even if you're an atheist or agnostic, you seem to be a bit agnostic as well. So it's difficult sometimes on both sides, being a Christian, being an atheist, or a Muslim, or Buddhist, whatever. So I just was wondering, what advice could you give someone that's looking for like the way to find something like this, especially from, we heard like from a person that was religious, and now from you with this neuroscience background and knowing how things kind of work, you know, and knowing all the science behind it that start to explain like consciousness and the brain and like how everything is connected, and there's like everything has a reason and stuff like this. So how do you what advice could you give people to find their belief in their personal life?
That is a very deep question. I think I don't know. I think it depends on like for me, I think it depends on the interactions people have with others, or like everyone has their, like for me, I was born into Catholicism, raised with Catholicism, still I guess follow Catholicism, or believe in Catholicism. I'm not sure how to word that properly. But like as a Catholic, I have my yeses and my nos, if that makes sense. Like personally, I'm not speaking to like the Catholic Church, so personally. But then I have a cousin who relatively recently has found herself in the faith of Catholicism, and I'm not exactly sure what triggered her to look more and like read more and talk to more people. But I think when I asked her, she said something along the lines of like, she was just curious, because similarly, she was like, not to the same extent, but similarly, she was raised in a Catholic household, went to a Catholic school, all that stuff. But it was just going through the motions, not really practicing. And so I guess one day she took it upon herself to learn more, and she is one of the most devout Christians I know. And it was amazing to see her growth in that, because I guess this is like sort of going back into when we were speaking about like how do you get yourself out of like the hole when you're having a bad day or bad couple days, a bad period of time. A lot of people, and me myself also, I find comfort in my belief, and I think it just depends. If someone's happy in the life that they're living, I don't think they're going to be looking for something to believe in if they don't believe in anything. But I also know, like, on the flip side, there's people who have had a horrible experience, and they're like, there's no way that there's a God or someone out there, because no being would be okay with this. Like, that would be a cruel being. So like, I think it is super dependent on people's life experiences, and if people want to look for more and want more to believe in. Because if there's no desire to believe in something, it's just not going to happen. I don't even know if that answered your question, but
yeah, thank you so far. So our podcast name is Unpopular People, And we always ask our guest, imagine you would be popular, so well known all over the world. Imagine, for example, you would invent
Neuralink.
yeah, or like a medicine that can heal dementia or Parkinson or whatever. What would you do with this power, and what would you do with this knowledge, this popularity all over the world?
Oh, that's a lot of pressure. Yeah, I don't envy popular, like pop culture people, famous people, because there's no right. They can do no right and they can do no wrong at the same time. Like even just in the past year or so, there's been political unrest all over the world, racial tension, the pandemic, and it's really highlighted them versus us narrative. And by them I mean like the upper class, the people who like are able to rent a private island for them to party during a pandemic, whereas the rest of us, people are small business owners and losing money, losing their family members. So one thing that I thought was really interesting during the pandemic in particular was a lot of the celebrities were like, oh, like just wear a mask, like it's easy, just wear a mask, or like, oh, like fun ways to like try and stay excited and doing stuff at home. And it's like, oh, but your home is like a little village. Like you there's a lot that you can do, whereas like some of us were sharing a house with however many people and we don't have room to swim in the afternoon and then have our private chef wearing a mask though, because we're being COVID safe to prepare us a 5-course meal. So I don't know, if I was famous, I would try and find a way to avoid all the cliches that I see that today's famous people do. And I think it's so much easier said than done. I think if I was in it, like, I'd be like, oh, I'm doing this and this is enough. But from the other side, it just never seems to be enough. If I was a popular person, I hope that I would be popular in helping people out in whatever way whatever that means. I don't even know what that looks like, what that would be, but I just hope that I wouldn't be one of the people I send messages to my cousin about saying, how ridiculous does this sound? Like, I hope that people would, at least the mass majority of people would think that I was a helpful person.
Great. Thank you very much. And we come to our last meaningful question. The rest is more about how people can get in touch with you. And we also asked our guests if you would have a school full of kids, what do you think is some of the most important things they should learn at school? What is probably now missing in the school system all around the world?
I think one, and this is again another hippy dippy answer. Okay, perfect, because that's the route I'm going. One is just kindness and consideration. I think the way children are raised affects how they are as adults so much. I'm sure you've encountered like some nightmare people. I mean, we all have. And it's just because they're just so ingrained in their own world and like their own agenda and what they have to do, and not considerate about how it affects others. And so I think one thing that, and I don't know what that course would be called, but I think Kindness and Consideration 101, I think that's something that could really be, I don't know how, but incorporated into our school systems. And then something more, I guess, tactical is taxes, because I still don't know how to do my taxes. And moving here, I'm worried about who's gonna do them, because my dad usually does them. So I think taxes is a big thing. And also now, I think investments would be a really good thing to teach children growing up, because it's such a huge opportunity for people. And before it was kind of an exclusive thing. But now with like the rise of cryptocurrencies and just the globalization of the world, and just mass information of everything we can find online. I think investments, and how to like do that smartly could be beneficial to people. Growing up, just knowing how to do that if they want to do that, which who wouldn't, because it's so cool. It makes sense. But yeah, I think those are my, off the top of my head, the things that should be taught.
Cool. Thank you so much. How can people get in touch with you if you want?
Yeah. The best way would probably be by Instagram or email, or Ben or Elisa. Yeah, probably through Ben and Elisa first, because I'm just very horrible with social media. Just because I'm like, that's one of my tactics to staying like calm, is just I like take my time with responding to things, or if I'm like feeling overwhelmed, I just take a step back. So yeah, maybe through you.
Yeah, thank you very much. You're part of our Unpopular People community now, and you also get in our Discord server, you get access to be a moderator. So we have a Discord server where people can exchange with each other. We try to make this more public and have people on the server discussing different things. So it would be great if you become a part of this as well. It's very quiet there at the moment because everyone's still on social media, but we are horrible with social media as well. So this is the way we personally want to go with our company as well, with our project Unpopular People as well. And so thank you very much for your time today. It's really great that you took the time out of your busy studying days to come here and have this interview with us. And we both feel very inspired. So thank you very much for your time. From my side, I say goodbye from my side.
Yes, thank you from my side as well. We wish you all the best, and for your further studies, that everything goes like you wish to. And thank you very much for your time, the interview. And if you have any final words for our listeners, now's the time for it. Thank you and bye-bye.
So I would also like to thank you both so much for having me on the podcast today, and also for making this such a pleasant experience. I was so nervous. So this was great. So thank you for that. And I guess my final words to whoever's listening is just be proud of yourself for everything you've accomplished, and everything you're about to accomplish that you don't even know yet. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to this inspiring interview with Emmanuella.
If you want to find out more about her, have a look on our website www.unpopularpeople.com
and sign up for our newsletter.
And the community if you like.
Thank you and goodbye.
Bye bye.